Dan Patrick Show. Could Caleb Williams stay at USC after the season instead of entering the NFL draft? This conversation or this topic has been happening a lot recently, and I don't understand it. I'm not totally sure why Caleb Williams would stay at USC. I guess the idea is that he can continue making NIL money, but I would assume he can make a whole lot more money with an NFL contract, a first pick overall contract. I'm not sure. I guess like if he really doesn't want to play for the team that drafts him, but he could still just kind of hold out and leverage a trade or whatever. So I'm interested to hear what Dan has to say of what the reasoning would be.
Situation is certainly interesting and got a little bit more interesting after an article in GQ came out where Caleb Williams, USC quarterback, his father has said that the potential for being drafted to a bad team in an unfavorable situation could lead to the Heisman Trophy winner maybe staying for another season at USC.
Spoiler, every single first overall pick was drafted by a bad team and drafted into an unfavorable situation. Very rarely is the first pick in the draft, especially a quarterback, going to be drafted into a favorable situation. The team is the first pick, more than likely because they are terrible. So, I mean, seems like a weird risk to risk your entire playing career in college by injury or whatever else because you don't like the situation that the team could draft you in. What's to say that the next year would be a better situation? I don't see it.
USC. While he acknowledges that the current NFL draft system was born in the pursuit of parity, it's true that those high-pick players are often thrust onto a team that is still built to fail.
Yes,
and
almost
with being
always.
QB1 at the prestigious university carrying a tangible and substantial price tag these days, don't be surprised if maybe he decides that he'll use that as leverage. You got
leverage of who? Like leverage of what? I'm that's what I don't understand. It's like who is he leveraging against? I don't really get that.
Name, image, and likeness. And let's say the collectives decide, hey, we'll give you $10 million to stay one more year. Now, keep in mind, Bryce Young, as the number one pick, I think he had a signing bonus in his contract, his salary. It's like $25 million. You have to eventually get into the league to get into that second contract. And you want to wait another year to do that because you don't maybe want to go to the Arizona Cardinals? What's the guarantee that the team the following year is not going to be bad? And it might be Arizona.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, Dan's with me here. Not to mention, I think Caleb Williams right now, his NIL is something like $3 million. It might be low, it might be high, whatever. But let's just throw a random number out there. Let's say he makes $6 million a year at USC. Like Dan just said, you're talking about a signing bonus of $25, $30 million on top of your contract, on top of getting closer to your second contract, which as a quarterback, if you're good, you're going to make over $100 million, easy. On top of, you're in the NFL now, so you're getting the brand deals are even bigger, the marketing opportunities are even bigger. All the, if it's Arizona, you're the Arizona Cardinals starting quarterback, like all the marketing dollars that come with that. I think this was just a way of his dad or his agent, I guess the same person, saying like, maybe I'll come back to USC, maybe, the door's open for anything, who knows? Like, we're not, because I guess for some reason, players don't like to say they're leaving a school, even though everyone knows they are. So maybe this is a way of him trying to get around the question of, is he going to leave USC? No doubt about it. And maybe he's picked a weird way of saying, who knows? Maybe we'll go back to USC. Yeah, a lot of options. Maybe we'll go to the NFL. Maybe it's USC. Maybe who knows? And I guess he just chose a poor choice of words, trying to make it sound like a weird business decision. But yeah, this one didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Again. But you can do this now. You got to take the hit, and it'll be a brief amount of heat that you're going to take if you decide that you don't want to go to a team. Now, you could just say that. Just say, I don't want to go to that team, and I want them to trade me. Yeah. Now, they still may draft you, but
they'll trade you. Like Eli.
I remember Elway was ostracized.
John Elway,
he doesn't want to go.
Thank you.
And Elway didn't want to play for the then Baltimore Colts. He didn't like the organization.
If you
And
look at
it worked
Eli,
out.
if you look at Eli, when he came out and Archie and Eli said he's not going to play for San Diego. He doesn't want to play for the Chargers. Trade him. And he got traded. And it was like a weird thing. It did look bad. The optics were bad. He did take a hit. But how much of a hit? A week? 2 days? 24 hours? Maybe not even that much? How much of that stuck with Eli for his career? How much of that stuck with John Elway for his career? A lot of people don't even know that. A lot of people don't even know that Elway and the whole Colts Elway saga. You know, so that would be the leverage. That would be the way to do it. Is you get drafted or you're about to get drafted and you say, I'm not playing for blank team. You can draft me, but you better trade me. I'm not playing. I'll hold out. Whatever. Like that makes much more sense than going back to USC. I don't care how big NIL is.
Out for him. And then Eli didn't want to play. His family didn't want him to play for the Chargers.
Yeah. It was Archie
what
driven.
It came down to.
Yeah, it was Archie driven.
You know, there's a 30 for 30 in there. And I have been told things off the record, so I want to be fair. But there's a lot more to, I think, Eli not going to the Chargers there. Can Caleb Williams do that and have the leverage? Absolutely. Just say you don't want to go to Arizona if that's the case. I mean, this feels like this is a direct shot at Arizona because they are considered the odds-on favorite to be the worst team in football. Caleb Williams needs to just go out and play. I don't know if his dad...
Again, I think this was just kind of a flippant quote. I think it's one of those things where when you take it out of context or you just take the quote itself, it is like head-scratching. It is borderline ridiculous, the whole thing. I do agree with that. But it's one of those where I don't know the guy, but he might have just got his words mixed up. He might have got crossed up in what he was trying to say. Like all that kind of makes sense. I could definitely see that. I could definitely see where it'd be like, I was trying to say this. I was trying to leave the door open for coming back to USC. I made it sound like a weird business decision, or I made it sound like a weird shot at Arizona. You know, all of that kind of lines up. That makes more sense to me than him actually saying, like him actually trying to give the notion that they do have leverage against whoever as in a business sense, where, because even if that's the case, even if they're like, well, we could just go back to the NIL money. It's like, that's not even close. That's not even close to NFL money. And why would you risk a year in college just because you don't like potentially who the first overall pick team is, when next year it could be the exact same team? Oh, and if Arizona wants him bad enough, they could just trade up and get the pick anyways. So, yeah.
Dad was speaking for him, but that would be where I would say, Dad, you know, it's going to be tough enough. I don't need anybody saying anything about what's going to happen next April. Let me just go out and ball. Let me play. And then we could say something about it. But I give credit to GQ asking the question.
How can the team that has the number one pick be in a good situation?
Very rarely will the team with the first overall pick be in a good situation. I mean, I guess a way you could look at it is like this past year. So the Bears were the first overall pick, traded to the Panthers. But let's pretend that, you know, the situations are different. And let's pretend that the team that gets the first overall pick also in the offseason gets like a brand new coach. So let's say this upcoming year, let's say the Cardinals were the worst team in the NFL. But let's say Sean Payton was still not coaching. And then all of a sudden, if that team gets a coach like Sean Payton, obviously, if you're Caleb Williams, it's like, man, all of a sudden, that's kind of intriguing. Yes, this team is total trash, but now it's a whole fresh start with a Hall of Fame coach, who specifically is a Hall of Fame offensive coach. So bad teams can get makeovers, whether it's on the staff or the front office or even the ownership group, things like that. And not all situations are created equal, where if the Giants are the worst team in the NFL, that's more attractive than the Cleveland Browns being the worst team in the NFL. Because I think if you're a first overall pick quarterback, you would rather go to New York than go to Cleveland, right? So cities matter around you, teams around, like the players around you matter. Some teams may have a young roster or one or two exciting players, things like, you know, they may trade, they may do an off-season move for a player. So there are very, very rare cases where it's not that big of a deal. But a majority of the time, a majority of the time, yeah, you're going to be walking into a terrible situation.
If you trade,
Yeah. So the Carolina Panthers are a better franchise, and they traded up with the Bears. If you're Bryce Young, you're probably happy as you don't want to go to the Bears as a quarterback.
I mean, the Bears and the Panthers, I would say the same. But that could be a situation where a player would rather play in Chicago, or even a year like with Peyton Manning in Indianapolis. So Peyton Manning in Indy was like whatever, a 12+ win team. He leaves. Curtis Painter is the quarterback. They're terrible. They get the first overall pick. Boom, Andrew Luck comes in. The foundation for a team is there. Like that team, that situation is very different than the situations in the last couple of years with like the Bears being bad, or the years the Texans are bad, or the year now the Carolina is the first overall pick. Those rosters are very different than like that Colts roster that ended up with the first overall pick.
Quarterback generally.
well, the Bears already had a quarterback.
Yeah.
But
I guess state of the franchise.
like Carolina's not good.
Like the Rams is another example. The Rams, let's say Matthew Stafford retires tomorrow. The Rams are in the conversation for the worst team in the NFL. I would much rather go to the Rams with Sean McVay as your head coach and Aaron Donald on the field, and you're in Los Angeles, than going to Carolina. Because just as far as like Carolina staff versus McVay versus a team that just won a Super Bowl versus Aaron Donald on the field versus living in Los Angeles, like there are a lot of variables that go into making a situation better. There's more that goes into it than just your record.
They have a better history, though. Is it?
Yeah, but you got a new owner who's very impatient. New coach. I mean, I hope Bryce Young, it works out for him, but there's no guarantee. It just feels like this is a shot at the Cardinals. Like, I don't want to go there. Maybe if you can, use it as leverage.
I don't know who the leverage is. That's my biggest thing is like people keep saying that. Use it as leverage, but who are you using it with leverage? Who is being leveraged?
You take the heat for a couple of weeks and then get to go to a team. Here's the thing. He's so good that he'll be the number one pick more than likely.
But he can't go backwards. Once you go into the draft, you can't get drafted and then say, hey, Arizona, if you draft me, I'm going to go back to USC. That can't happen. So the idea of staying at USC is the part that doesn't make any sense. Leveraging himself to another team, like forcing a trade, is a whole different story. That's a whole different thing than dangling that you could go back to USC.
You're going to go to a bad team.
Let me know, ladies and gentlemen, what you think in the comments below. Do you think there's any possible way that Caleb Williams goes back to USC? Or do you think his dad just kind of whoopsie-poopsied and said something he probably shouldn't have? Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.